Chapter 1 Midnight Roommate. Ezra had never thought of himself as desperate. Stoic? Yes. Unflappable? Certainly. The kind of man who would rather wrestle a bear than negotiate with his landlord? Without a doubt. But even the toughest men could not withstand the rising cost of rent. Which was how Ezra found himself placing an ad for a roommate. Spare room available. No smoking, no weirdos. 3 days later, at precisely midnight, the doorbell rang. Ezra opened it to find a tall, pale man in a sweeping black cloak that looked like it had been stolen from a theater costume department. His hair fell across his face, and in his arms, he carried a suitcase covered in stickers shaped like bats. The stranger extended a hand, his voice echoing as though he had practiced in a bathroom mirror. "Greetings, mortal. I am Damon, the terror of the night." Ezra stared at the hand, then at the cloak, then at the suitcase. Finally, he said, "The ad specifically said no weirdos." Damon's grin faltered, but only briefly. "I assure you, I am no mere weirdo. I am a vampire of terrible power, feared for centuries." "Rent's due on the 1st, Ezra interrupted, stepping aside. Damon blinked. "Oh, that's it? You're not screaming? Or begging for mercy?" Ezra shrugged. "You're paying half the bills, right?" "Of course. I am flush with gold from my vast crypts." Damon puffed his chest. Ezra arched an eyebrow. Damon pulled a handful of oddly tarnished coins from his pocket. They clinked heavily in his palm. "Those better not be chocolate," Ezra muttered. Inside, the apartment was modest. Plain couch, sturdy table, not a single decorative item. Ezra was a man of essentials. Damon, by contrast, swept into the living room as though it were a throne room. "Ah, my lair," Damon announced, throwing his arms wide. His cloak nearly knocked over a lamp. "Yes, I shall make it suitably gloomy. Black curtains, cobwebs, perhaps a coffin in the corner. You put up one cobweb, and you're cleaning the whole place," Ezra deadpanned. "Fine, fine. A futon then." Damon sighed, flopping onto the couch. Ezra ignored him and returned to unpacking a box of kitchen supplies. He cursed under his breath when a paper cut sliced across his finger. Damon, mid-sigh, froze, his eyes locked onto the single bead of blood. Ezra looked up. "What?" Damon swayed on the couch. His pale face paled even further. "Blood. Oh, merciful darkness. So much, so red," he whispered hoarsely. Ezra frowned at the tiny cut. "It's barely a drop." Damon made a strangled noise, stood abruptly, and then, thud, he fainted flat onto the rug, cloak spread like wings. Ezra blinked down at him. "You've got to be kidding me." It took a glass of water, some muttered curses, and Ezra shaking his shoulder before Damon stirred again. He groaned, clutching his forehead. "Ugh! The bloodlust overtook me." Ezra held up his finger. The cut had already dried. "Bloodlust? You fainted like a Victorian maiden." "It is a strategic fainting. Yes, a demonstration of my control." Damon tried to sit up with dignity, but the cloak tangled around his legs and he flopped over again. Ezra pinched the bridge of his nose. "So let me get this straight. You call yourself the terror of the night. You show up here in a Halloween costume, and when you see a paper cut, you pass out." Damon puffed his cheeks, indignant. "Do not mock me. I merely have a delicate constitution. I prefer my blood in pill form, much more refined." Ezra raised an eyebrow. "Blood pills?" "Yes." Damon pulled out a rattling bottle from his suitcase. The label read, "Nutravamp, fortified blood substitute, cherry flavor." Ezra stared. "Cherry flavor? They taste like despair, but very nutritious," Damon admitted. Later, as Ezra showed him to the spare room, Damon trailed behind, muttering to himself. "Pathetic? Me? Ha! I am darkness incarnate." He paused. "Darkness incarnate who needs help setting up Wi-Fi." Ezra handed him the spare key and said, "You do one thing to wreck my place, you're out." "Got it." Damon clutched the key to his chest as though it were a holy relic. You won't regret this, Ezra. Soon you will see. My terrifying powers, my unholy charm, my... Ezra slammed the door to his own room shut. Damon pouted in the hallway. My roommate is immune to awe. This will be challenging. He shuffled into his room, tripped over his cloak, and landed face first on the bed. From the other side of the wall, Ezra sighed heavily and muttered to himself, I've just invited the most pathetic vampire in existence into my life. And somehow, though he didn't yet know why, Ezra couldn't bring himself to regret it. Chapter 2: Bloody Pills and Burnt Toast. Ezra had always imagined that living with a vampire would mean shadows creeping under doors, sinister whispers at midnight, maybe the occasional cape swish echoing down the hall. Instead, it meant waking up to the sound of crunching. Not the quiet, respectable crunch of cereal. No, this was a dry, brittle, chalkboard scraping kind of crunch that made Ezra's teeth ache just hearing it. He shuffled into the kitchen, hair messy from sleep, and stopped dead. At the table sat Damon, in his black silk pajamas, cloak still draped over his shoulders like he couldn't bear to part with it. In front of him sat an open pill bottle the size of a soda can. Damon was tossing white tablets into his mouth and chewing them with exaggerated disgust. He gagged, pounding the table. Curse these abominations. They taste like powdered despair mixed with cherry cough syrup. Ezra rubbed his eyes. Are you seriously eating those vitamin pills for breakfast? Vitamins? Damon slammed both hands on the table, nearly knocking the pills everywhere. How dare you insult my sustenance? These contain the essence of life itself, or at least synthetic iron, folic acid, and artificial cherry extract. He popped another one into his mouth, chewed, then gagged. Ugh! Truly, immortality is suffering. Ezra grabbed an apple from the counter, bit into it loudly, and said around a mouthful, You're pathetic. Damon narrowed his eyes, crimson but watery from the chalk. One day, you will tremble before my terrible hunger. Not today, Ezra muttered. That evening, Ezra returned from work to find the apartment suspiciously smoky. His instincts as an ex-bouncer kicked in immediately. He dropped his bag, ran to the kitchen, and threw open the door, only to find Damon standing in front of the stove, cloak tied around his waist like an apron, holding a smoking frying pan with oven mitts. Ah, perfect timing. Roommate, you shall be the first mortal to taste my dark feast. Damon cried, spinning around with wild eyes. Ezra coughed, waving away smoke. What did you do to my kitchen? Cooked, Damon said proudly. He tilted the pan. Its contents resembled charcoal briquettes. Behold, pancakes of eternal night. Ezra stared. They're black. They're meant to be black. Symbolic. Charred like the souls of the damned. A loud beep 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 interrupted as the smoke alarm shrieked overhead. Damon jumped so violently he dropped the pan. The pancakes clattered onto the floor like hockey pucks. Ezra groaned, grabbed a towel, and started fanning the alarm. Damon, meanwhile, was flapping his cloak at it like an overgrown bat. Cease your screeching, metallic demon, Damon cried. Stop, Ezra barked. You'll set the rest of the apartment on fire. I am controlling the flames, Damon insisted, just as his cloak sleeve brushed too close to the burner and started to smolder. Ezra lunged forward, yanked the cloak off him, and dumped it in the sink under running water. Are you trying to burn the place down on your second day? It fought back. Ezra pinched the bridge of his nose. It was toast, Damon. Toast does not fight back. It hissed at me. That was the butter. When the smoke finally cleared, Ezra whipped up something edible. Eggs, rice, and stir-fried vegetables. Damon sat sulking at the table, cloak dripping wet in the sink, arms crossed. This is so mundane. Where is the poetry? The darkness? The despair? Damon muttered. Ezra set down the plate in front of him. Eat. Damon sniffed it suspiciously. Does it at least contain despair? Ezra gave him a flat look. Damon sighed, then picked up his chopsticks with surprising grace. He took one bite, chewed slowly, then froze. It's good. Ezra smirked. Better than your eternal hockey pucks? Damon scowled. You wound me, Ezra. My pancakes were avant-garde. They could have been used as building materials. Later that night, when the dishes were done and Damon had retreated to his room to sulk about his failed culinary ambitions, Ezra found himself leaning against the counter, arms crossed. He was annoyed. Sure, his kitchen smelled like smoke, and his roommate was a walking disaster. But he remembered the look on Damon's face when he admitted the food was good. Soft, almost human. As if he wasn't just some theatrical vampire pretending to be scary. Ezra shook his head. Pathetic, he muttered. And yet, he couldn't quite stop the corner of his mouth from twitching upward. From down the hall came the muffled sound of Damon gagging on another blood pill. Ugh! Why cherry? Ezra snorted. For all his complaints, it was weirdly nice not to eat alone. Chapter 3: Garlic Tragedy. It started innocently enough. Ezra came home late, grocery bag tucked under one arm, the smell of baked goods trailing after him. He kicked off his shoes, dropped his keys in the bowl, and announced, "Dinner's here, garlic bread." He expected the usual. Damon appearing from his room, cloak swirling, complaining about Ezra's uninspired mortal cuisine. What he got instead was a blood-curdling shriek. Ah! Ezra blinked. What was that? Damon burst into the living room like someone had fired a silver bullet at him. His red eyes went wide, hands clawed at the air as though he could physically push the smell away. Then, with all the grace of a fainting goat, he hurled himself over the back of the couch, landing in a heap of limbs and cloak. Ezra stared. Are you serious right now? Damon popped his head up, hair wild, hissing like a feral cat. You dare bring that poison into my sanctuary? How could you, Ezra? Betrayal most foul. Ezra held up the wrapped loaf. It's bread, with butter, and garlic. Don't say its name. Damon clutched his cloak around him as though garlic might seep through the fabric. Do you wish to see me wither into dust? Do you wish to scatter my ashes across this hideous linoleum floor? Ezra sighed, setting the bag on the counter. I just wanted carbs. Carbs soaked in death. Damon countered, then hissed again for emphasis. For the next half hour, Damon refused to come out from behind the couch. Every time Ezra unwrapped the foil, Damon emitted a long, wounded groan, as though his very soul were being strangled. I cannot breathe. The stench, the torment, he wailed. Ezra took a bite and chewed slowly, making direct eye contact. Tastes fine to me. You mock my suffering. You deserve it. You nearly burned the apartment down yesterday with your pancakes of eternal night. Consider this karma. This is not karma. This is war. Damon snapped, clutching the couch cushion like a lifeline. The chaos peaked when there was a sudden knock 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 on the door. Ezra froze. Damon froze. Mr. Lee? This your landlord. Routine inspection. Ezra muttered under his breath. Of all the times. Damon's eyes widened in panic. You cannot let him in. He will sense me. He's not a vampire hunter, Ezra hissed back. But he carries the aura of garlic on his breath. I know it. Before Ezra could respond, Damon let out another hiss, louder this time. Mr. Lee, is everything all right in there? The landlord called, puzzled. Ezra rubbed his face, took a steadying breath, then opened the door. Mr. Hahn, their elderly landlord, peered in, clipboard in hand. Behind Ezra, Damon growled low in his throat like a cat cornered in an alley. Mr. Hahn's brows knit together. Was that an animal? Ezra deadpanned. My roommate. Your roommate makes noises like that? New medication. Side effects include hissing. Ezra lied smoothly. Another hiss tore through the apartment, followed by Damon shouting, You shall not bring your foul garlic breath into this sanctum. Ezra's eye twitched. Mr. Hahn blinked. He sounds passionate. That's one word for it. The landlord did a quick circuit through the kitchen, bathroom, and hallway, scribbling notes, while Damon remained crouched behind the couch, peeking out only to glare suspiciously. Every time Mr. Hahn so much as looked toward the garlic bread, Damon hissed like a tea kettle. Finally, Mr. Han nodded. Everything looks fine. Just maybe tell your roommate to keep it down? Some neighbors said they heard noises. Ezra felt a headache forming. I'll handle it. When the landlord left, Ezra shut the door and turned to face Damon. Damon immediately pointed an accusatory finger. That man reeked of garlic. He reeked of mothballs. That was you still smelling the bread. Ezra corrected. Damon groaned, collapsing across the couch like a dying Victorian maiden. You are cruel, Ezra. Cruel and heartless. Ezra leaned on the counter, arms crossed. You're the one hiding from a loaf of bread. A cursed loaf. You won't force me to eat it, will you? Damon insisted, then peeked one eye open. Ezra snorted. Trust me, I wouldn't waste good bread on you. Later that night, when the bread was gone, all eaten by Ezra, pointedly in front of Damon, the vampire finally slunk out from behind the couch. He looked ruffled, cloak wrinkled, eyes still narrowed in suspicion. Ezra was wiping down the counter when Damon mumbled, You could have warned me. Ezra paused, glancing at him. About what? Damon shifted awkwardly. The garlic. You could have told me before bringing it home. I know you think it's funny, but his voice softened. It really does scare me. For once, there was no hand gesture, no hiss, just honesty. Ezra sighed. Fine. I'll warn you next time. Damon blinked, surprised. Then quieter. You do that. Ezra gave him a flat look. You're ridiculous, but you're my ridiculous roommate. Don't make me regret it. A slow smile spread across Damon's face, genuine beneath all the theatrics. Then I shall forgive your betrayal this once mortal. Ezra rolled his eyes, but his lips twitched upward. Whatever you say. That night, Damon stayed out in the living room instead of locking himself away. He perched on the arm of the couch, cloak pooling around him, while Ezra scrolled on his phone. Every now and then, Damon would glance at him, then at the empty foil on the counter, and mutter under his breath. Garlic fiend. Ezra just smirked. Chapter 4, Smartphone of Darkness. Ezra should have known something was brewing when Damon announced one morning, cape swirling, eyes gleaming with dangerous determination. I require a device. Ezra, still half asleep over his coffee, muttered, A device. Yes. Damon slammed both hands on the counter. A smartphone. Ezra blinked, lifted his mug, and took another sip. Why? To stalk mortals. How else will I monitor their every move, their foolish gatherings, their pathetic attempts at romance? The world has advanced, Ezra. I must advance with it. Damon declared proudly. Ezra set his mug down with a thud. You want to stalk people on Facebook, and Messenger, and TikTok, and what is the other one? Instagram? Damon asked, brow furrowed. Ezra pinched the bridge of his nose. Instagram, not Instagram. And no, you don't need any of them. I do. Damon insisted, cloak swishing as though it gave his words more weight. The great Damon, terror of the night, cannot be left behind in this age of technology. Ezra muttered. Terror of the night can't even handle garlic bread. But 2 hours later, Ezra found himself standing in the electronics store while Damon hovered over the display, phones like a medieval noble confronted with sorcery. Damon tapped one phone gingerly with a claw-like fingernail. This one glows like the eye of Sauron. I shall take it. That's just the demo screen, Ezra said. And it comes with a camera, a tool to capture the soul. Damon whispered reverently, lifting the device as though it were Excalibur. Ezra grabbed it before Damon could kiss it. Just pick the cheapest model. You'll probably destroy it in a week. Damon gasped. You wound me. I will guard it with my unlife. Ezra raised an eyebrow. Like you guarded the toaster last week? That toaster was cursed. Damon shot back. Back at the apartment, Ezra sat on the couch, phone in hand, and gestured for Damon to sit. Okay, first, texting. It's how normal people communicate. Damon narrowed his eyes. Normal mortals communicate by voice, not pressing tiny glowing squares. Ezra typed, "Hi." Then he handed the phone to Damon. "Now reply." Damon poked the keyboard with one finger. Slowly, agonizingly. "H-E. Not hell. You're writing hell. Is that not fitting?" Damon smirked. Ezra shoved his shoulder. "Just write hello." After 3 minutes of intense concentration and several muttered curses in what Ezra assumed was Latin, Damon finally produced, "Hello, mortal, bow before me." Ezra squinted. "That's something." Damon beamed, proud as a child showing off their first drawing. "See? I am mastering your arcane arts. Now, this is Facebook. You add friends, share posts, comment on things," Ezra explained. "Perfect for surveillance," Damon declared, immediately attempting to friend every single person within a 10-mile radius. "Stop that. You can't just add strangers." Ezra snatched the phone back. "They will tremble when they see who has summoned them. They'll block you, Damon." Damon frowned, clearly not understanding but equally unwilling to admit defeat. Ezra sighed. "Fine. This one's Messenger. You use it to chat." Damon typed his first message to Ezra. "I hunger for blood." Ezra typed back, "Block." Damon gasped. "You can block me?" "Easily." Damon clutched his chest, scandalized. Cruel mortal. By evening, Damon had explored every setting on his phone. "Ezra, I have found it, the sound of my soul," he cried, bursting from his room. Ezra looked up from his book. "What did you do?" Damon raised the phone high. "I have set my ringtone to thunder." He pressed a button. The phone roared with an ear-splitting sound that rattled the windows. Ezra nearly dropped his book. "Turn it off." "Never. Now, whenever I am summoned, the heavens themselves shall tremble," Damon shouted, delighted. The next day, Ezra made the mistake of dragging Damon along to the grocery store. Damon insisted on wearing his cloak despite Ezra's protests, and naturally, the phone went off mid-aisle. A thunderclap louder than a stadium speaker exploded from Damon's pocket. The old lady near the cereal boxes nearly fainted. A toddler started crying. Damon shrieked and leapt 3 feet in the air. "What demon dares summon me?" Ezra covered his face with one hand, pushing the cart forward. "It's just a text. Calm down." Damon scrambled for the phone, muttering, "I was not startled, merely assessing the threat." Ezra muttered, "Sure you were." That night, after Damon finally stopped experimenting with emojis, "Why is there a smiling pile of dung? Is this a mortal curse?" Ezra sat on the couch scrolling his own phone. Damon sprawled upside down on the armchair, cloak trailing the floor, humming with satisfaction. "I am mastering this world's secrets. Soon, mortals will tremble at my online presence," Damon said. Ezra didn't look up. "Or laugh at you." Damon grinned, fangs flashing. "Let them laugh. I've already won." Ezra finally glanced at him, raising an eyebrow. "How?" Damon rolled to his side, clutching the phone like it was a treasure. "Because you're the one teaching me." Ezra blinked, caught off guard. For a moment, the apartment felt quieter, softer, less like a circus and more like home. He looked away, muttering, "Don't get sappy." Damon chuckled, eyes half-lidded. "You like it." Ezra ignored him, but the corner of his mouth betrayed him, curving just slightly upward. Chapter 5: The Spider War. Ezra knew something was wrong the moment he stepped through the apartment door. The first clue, the eerie silence. Damon usually filled the place muttered Latin curses at his phone, or loud rants about the indignity of blood pills. Tonight, nothing. The second clue, the faint sound of whimpering. Ezra set down his grocery bags. "Damon, in here!" came a strangled cry. Ezra pushed open the kitchen door and froze. There, perched on the countertop like a Gothic gargoyle, was Damon. His cape was drawn tightly around him like a protective cocoon. His knees were tucked to his chest, fangs bared in sheer panic. Ezra blinked. "What are you doing up there?" Damon extended a trembling finger toward the far wall. "The beast, the creature of nightmares, the horror that stalks me." Ezra followed his gaze. On the wall, near the cupboard, sat a spider. Tiny, harmless, barely the size of a coin. Ezra turned back slowly. Are you serious? Yes, Damon wailed, clutching his cape. It has 8 legs, Ezra. 8. No mortal should tolerate such abominations. Ezra rubbed his temples. You're an immortal vampire who claims to have battled werewolves, demons, and gods. And triumphed. Damon interjected. And you're scared of a spider? Damon's eyes widened. Do not underestimate it. Look at its stance. The arrogance. The sheer malice dripping from its every limb. Ezra glanced at the spider. It hadn't moved. It's just sitting there. That's what it wants you to think, lulling us into complacency until it strikes. A master of psychological warfare. Damon hissed. Ezra set his jaw, walked over, grabbed a tissue from the counter, and gently scooped the spider into it. He carried it to the window, opened the glass, and let the little creature drift into the night. Damon watched in stunned silence. You spared it? Of course. It wasn't hurting anyone. Problem solved. Ezra shut the window and turned. For a moment, Damon was silent. Then, with all the solemnity of a medieval ceremony, he slid off the counter and dropped to one knee before Ezra. My knight, my savior, slayer of terrors. You are truly worthy. He whispered reverently, pressing a hand to his chest. Ezra blinked. You're not serious. I hereby dub you Ezra the Brave, defender of the realm, conqueror of spiders. Damon raised an invisible sword and tapped Ezra's shoulders. Ezra shoved his hand away. Get off the floor. You look insane. But Damon stayed kneeling, eyes shining. I mean it. You risked your very life to spare mine. Ezra snorted. Pretty sure the spider posed 0 threat. 0? You mortals may scoff, but I assure you, 1 bite and I would have perished. Damon clutched his heart. Ezra crossed his arms. You're immortal. To everything but spiders, Damon muttered darkly. Damon refused to leave Ezra's side for the rest of the evening. Every creak of the floorboards made him leap. Every shadow became a lurking arachnid army. Ezra finally snapped. You're ridiculous. You know that? I am cautious. The war is never truly over. Spiders are cunning. They regroup. They wait. Damon corrected, eyes darting to the corners of the ceiling. Ezra dropped onto the couch, exhausted. You're acting like it was the Battle of Helm's Deep. It was, and you fought valiantly. Do you know what this means? Ezra groaned. Please don't. You are my knight, and as my knight, you must protect me in all future battles against the 8-legged menace. Damon flung himself onto the couch beside him. Ezra muttered, I'm charging double rent. Damon gasped. Knights do not demand rent. They demand honor, glory, and the occasional roast chicken. Ezra side-eyed him. You just want dinner. Preferably with no garlic, Damon said primly. Eventually, Damon grew quieter, leaning back against the cushions. His eyes, usually full of mischief, softened as he watched Ezra flip through a book. You know, no one's ever defended me before, Damon said quietly. Ezra looked up, frowning. From a spider? From anything. I always boasted about my power, my immortality. But truthfully, I've been on my own a very long time. I suppose it feels different to have someone care enough to step in, even for something small. Ezra blinked. The words hit deeper than he expected. He shut his book slowly. You're saying thank you in the weirdest possible way. Damon smirked faintly, though his eyes still carried that rare softness. It's the only way I know how. Ezra rolled his eyes, but his lips twitched into the barest hint of a smile. You're welcome, idiot. By the time Ezra went to bed, Damon had taped handwritten warning signs all over the apartment. Beware the 8-limbed friends. Ezra tore one off the bathroom door with a sigh. You're never going to let this go, are you? Damon's muffled voice came from his bedroom. A knight's duty never ends. Ezra shook his head, chuckling under his breath. Maybe his roommate was the most pathetic vampire in history. But somehow, Ezra didn't mind being his knight. Not one bit. Chapter 6, Grocery Store of Doom. Saturday morning dawned with sunshine and normalcy, two things Damon despised. Ezra, on the other hand, had a simple mission: restock the fridge. He grabbed his keys, wallet, and list. Just as he slipped on his jacket, Damon appeared in the hallway, blocking the door with a flourish of his cloak. "Where do you march to, mortal?" Damon demanded, his voice echoing with theatrical menace. Ezra raised an eyebrow. "The grocery store. Unless you want to survive on stale crackers and the last sad carrot. I need food." Damon placed a hand over his chest. "Then I shall accompany you. The Lord of Night must survey this mortal marketplace to ensure it is fit for my consumption." Ezra groaned. "You're not coming in that." He gestured at Damon's attire. Flowing black cloak, polished boots, silver brooch. "This is my casual wear," Damon sniffed. "People will call security before we hit the dairy aisle." "Let them. They will tremble before my aura," Damon said, sweeping his cape with pride. Ezra sighed. "Fine. But if you get us banned, you're explaining to the landlord why we can't buy milk anymore." As predicted, chaos began the moment they stepped into the fluorescent-lit temple of capitalism. Children pointed. One burst into tears. A man in sweatpants muttered, "Is Comic-Con in town?" Damon, however, glided through the automatic doors like he was entering a cathedral. A hall of abundance. A place where mortals grovel before shelves of sustenance. Ezra shoved a cart at him. "It's a grocery store. Push." Damon studied the cart as though it were an alien artifact. "You wish me to steer this chariot of steel? Just push the thing." The cart lurched forward with a squeal as Damon shoved it, nearly colliding with a display of watermelons. Ezra lunged, grabbing the handle. "For the love of, just let me drive." They made it 2 aisles in before Damon staged his first protest. Ezra tossed bread into the cart. Damon recoiled. "This loaf is too soft. Bread should be dark, dense, a weapon in battle if necessary. It's sandwich bread." "Pathetic." Ezra ignored him and grabbed eggs. Damon peered suspiciously at the carton. "They trap unborn dragons in these shells? They're chicken eggs." Damon crossed his arms. "Same difference." When they reached the spice aisle, Ezra grabbed a jar of garlic powder. The vampire screamed. Every head turned. Damon clutched his throat, staggering backward like he'd been shot. "You dare wield such vile poison in my presence?" Ezra shoved the jar back onto the shelf, face red. "Relax. No one's killing you with seasoning." A passing mom shielded her child and whispered, "Don't make eye contact." Ezra muttered, "See? This is why I didn't want to bring you." In the health aisle, Damon spotted a shelf of vitamins. His eyes widened. "My people." Before Ezra could stop him, Damon grabbed a bottle of iron supplements, shaking it like treasure. "These mortals have perfected blood in pill form. They're vitamins. Iron is blood's essence. At last, I am understood." Damon tore the seal with his teeth, dumped a handful of tablets into his mouth, and immediately spat them across the aisle. "Blasphemy. Chalk. Bitter chalk." Ezra yanked the bottle from him and shoved it back. "You can't just open stuff and eat it. Why do they sell lies in such sacred halls?" Damon cried, brushing his tongue with his sleeve. A clerk rounded the corner, eyeing them suspiciously. Ezra forced a smile. "He's on a new diet." The clerk frowned but walked off. Ezra grabbed Damon by the arm. "You're one incident away from being banned." Finally, Ezra dragged a sulking Damon to the checkout line. "We're paying and leaving." Quietly, Damon perked up. "Ah yes, the exchange of currency. Fear not. I come prepared." Ezra froze as Damon reached into his cloak and produced a handful of tarnished gold coins. They clinked onto the conveyor belt. The cashier blinked. "What is this?" "Gold," Damon declared proudly. "Minted in the 17th century. Worth kingdoms." Ezra wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "Ignore him. He's into historical reenactments." The cashier stared. "We take cards. Or cash." not pirate treasure. Ezra shoved his debit card across the counter, glaring at Damon. Put your coins away before you get us arrested. Damon scooped them up with a sniff. Mortals have no appreciation for fine currency. As the receipt printed, the store's security alarms shrieked. Ezra's heart dropped. Damon, of course, threw his cape. They have discovered my aura of darkness. Flee, Ezra. Ezra grabbed the bags and Damon's arm, dragging him toward the exit as bewildered shoppers stared. You set off the metal detector with your stupid coins. They burst into the parking lot, Damon laughing breathlessly. Ah, what an adventure. Truly, we conquered the marketplace of mortals. Ezra shoved a bag at him. You nearly got us banned. Damon only smirked, cape fluttering in the wind. Admit it. Life is far less boring with me around. Ezra stared at him, torn between throttling and laughing. Finally, he sighed. Yeah, unfortunately. Later, as Ezra unpacked groceries, he found Damon perched on a stool, spinning one of his ancient coins between his fingers. For once, the vampire was quiet, his face oddly thoughtful. You know, I used to buy food for an entire household. Back when I had one. I forgot what it was like. Sharing meals. Arguing over bread. Ezra glanced at him. The bravado had slipped, just for a second, and it made something in Ezra's chest tighten. Guess you've got one again, Ezra muttered, setting down a carton of milk. Damon blinked. Then a slow, genuine smile tugged at his lips. Indeed, and my knight even braves fluorescent dungeons to provide for me. Ezra rolled his eyes, but his ears warmed. Eat your blood pills and shut up. Damon laughed, the sound ringing brighter than any grocery store alarm. Chapter 7: The Club Disaster. When Damon announced his latest scheme, Ezra nearly choked on his coffee. We must infiltrate a den of mortal vice. A nightclub, Damon declared, standing in the living room. Ezra set his mug down. Absolutely not. Damon ignored him. I, Damon, Lord of the Eternal Night, will blend seamlessly with these revelers. They will never suspect my true nature. Ezra gave him a flat look. You fainted last week because of a spider the size of a fingernail. You're not surviving a nightclub. Silence. Knave. I have studied. Damon pulled a crumpled magazine from his cloak pocket. The cover screamed, Top 10 Ways to Party Like a Rock Star. Ezra pinched the bridge of his nose. You got that out of the mailbox recycling bin. Knowledge is knowledge. Tonight, we conquer the mortal's temple of sound. Damon smirked. The bouncer barely blinked at Ezra, but when Damon stepped up, cape swirling, silver medallion gleaming, the man groaned. Costume party? The bouncer asked. Damon narrowed his eyes. This is no costume. I am darkness incarnate. Ezra shoved a hand over his mouth, muttering, He's in a band. Performance art. The bouncer sighed and waved them through. Inside, the club was a riot of neon lights, pulsing bass, and sweaty bodies pressed together on the dance floor. Damon's jaw dropped. By the abyss. It's a ritual of chaos. Ezra grabbed his arm. It's called dancing. Don't stare like you're about to call an exorcist. Damon marched to the bar and slammed a hand on the counter. Bring me your finest goblet of blood. The bartender blinked. Cranberry? Tomato juice. Tomato, yes. Thick, red, and terrible to stain carpets. Perfect. Damon boomed, pointing grandly. Ezra groaned into his hand as a tall glass of tomato juice slid across the counter. Damon raised it high. At last, nourishment worthy of the immortal kind. The girl beside him whispered to her friend, Is he role-playing? Ezra muttered, If only. Damon took a sip, then coughed violently, spraying juice onto the counter. What is this vile peasant brew? Tomato juice, the bartender said, unimpressed. Disgusting. Damon slammed it back anyway, grimacing with each swallow. Ezra muttered, You're the one who ordered it. It went downhill fast. Drawn to the stage, Damon pushed through the crowd until he stood before the DJ booth. The DJ, lost in the beat, didn't notice him at first. Damon raised both hands. Behold, I shall command the rhythm of mortals with the ancient power of hypnosis. Ezra's stomach dropped. Oh no. Damon locked eyes with the DJ. You are under my thrall. Play the Requiem of Shadows. The DJ blinked. What? Obey. Damon bellowed, waving his hands like a bad magician. Instead of being hypnotized, the DJ leaned toward his mic. Yo, is this guy for real? The crowd roared with laughter. Phones came out, flashes sparked. Damon froze. They resist my powers. Impossible. Ezra shoved through the crowd, grabbed Damon by the cloak, and hissed, You're making a scene. I am the scene. Damon shouted proudly. At that, the DJ dropped a bass-heavy remix of Monster Mash. The crowd howled, chanting, Vampire! Vampire! Damon, thinking he'd been recognized as a true Lord of Darkness, spread his arms in triumph. At last, they worship me. Ezra wanted to crawl into a hole. Within minutes, security was moving in. Ezra grabbed Damon's wrist and yanked him toward the exit. Wait, my followers! Damon protested, nearly tripping over his cape. Shut up and move, Ezra snapped. They burst out into the night air, Damon panting as though he'd fought 100 battles. He leaned against the wall, hair disheveled, cape crooked, tomato juice still dripping down his chin. Well, that was glorious. Damon gasped. Ezra rounded on him. Glorious? You nearly got thrown out for public nuisance. Damon grinned, sharp teeth flashing. They chanted for me. They saw my power. They laughed at you, Ezra corrected. Damon tilted his head, eyes glittering under the streetlight. And yet, for a moment, I was not alone in my madness. Isn't that enough? Ezra opened his mouth, ready to argue, but stopped. There was something in Damon's voice, something raw and almost fragile under the bravado. Ezra sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. You're a disaster. Damon smirked. A glorious one. Ezra shook his head, but the corners of his lips betrayed him, tugging upward. Yeah, unfortunately. Later that night, back home, Damon flopped onto the couch, cape spread around him like wings. Ezra, you are my anchor to the mortal world. Without you, I would be lost in the abyss of tomato juice and failed hypnosis. Ezra snorted. You'd be banned from every bar in town. That's what. Damon chuckled, low and content. Perhaps, but you dragged me out. You always do. Ezra froze, caught off guard by the softness in Damon's tone. He looked away quickly, muttering, Someone has to. Silence stretched, comfortable this time. Damon closed his eyes, a faint smile on his lips. Ezra found himself staring for a beat too long before shaking his head and heading to his room. Behind him, Damon whispered to the empty room, Perhaps the mortal world isn't so lonely after all. Chapter 8, Bat Trouble. Ezra was finally enjoying a rare quiet evening. He had his feet up, a cup of tea in hand, and the apartment was, for once, not filled with Damon's melodramatic speeches or kitchen disasters. It lasted exactly 4 minutes. Ezra, prepare yourself. Tonight, you shall behold the true terror of my kind. Damon's booming voice echoed down the hall. Ezra groaned. Not again. He didn't move. A dramatic swish of cloak announced Damon's arrival in the living room. He was grinning far too wide for Ezra's liking. Observe. I will reveal to you my ultimate gift, the transformation, Damon declared, standing in the center of the room like a stage actor. Ezra raised an eyebrow. Transformation? Yes, into the winged form of the night, sleek, terrifying, unstoppable. Mortals cower at the very sight. Damon puffed his chest. Ezra sipped his tea. Go on, then. Damon narrowed his eyes. You doubt me. Always. Damon threw his arms wide. Behold. He closed his eyes, muttered some incomprehensible chant, and began to shake. His outline shimmered faintly, like heat on asphalt. Ezra squinted. You're vibrating? Shoo. It begins. Damon's voice warped strangely as his arms shortened. His ears stretched, and fur sprouted where skin should be. Ezra sat forward. Oh, hell! There was a pop, a puff of smoke, and then silence. When it cleared, Damon stood hunched in the middle of the carpet. Except, not quite Damon. One wing flapped awkwardly, the other was half an arm. His head was too big, ears flopping like a rabbit's, and his teeth poked out at odd angles. A fluffy, lopsided hybrid of man and bat stared at Ezra with wide, panicked eyes. "Help!" Damon squeaked in a pitch far higher than usual. Ezra dropped his tea. "What the? You look like a rejected Pokemon." "This is temporary," Damon squealed, trying to spread his mismatched wings. He spun in a circle, tripped over his own claws, and landed flat on his back, legs kicking. Ezra pressed both hands over his face. "You're going to kill me one day, I swear." As Damon scrambled, there was a sudden knock on the door. Ezra froze. Damon froze. Hi!" A neighbor's voice called cheerfully. "Sorry to bother you, but I think I heard an animal? Do you guys have a dog now?" Ezra hissed at Damon. "Shut up!" Damon squeaked loudly, flapping one oversized wing. The neighbor's voice brightened. "Ah, is that a puppy? Can I see it?" Ezra bolted to the door, forcing a smile as he cracked it open just enough to show his face. "No puppy, just a blender. New blender. Very loud." Behind him, Damon let out a warbling screech. Ezra coughed. "Juicer. Very advanced juicer." The neighbor blinked. "Right?" Ezra slammed the door shut before they could say more. He spun around to see Damon attempting to crawl up the curtains like a giant, hairy moth. "Get down!" Ezra whisper yelled. "I am drawn to the heights. It's instinct." Damon squeaked indignantly. "You're going to rip my curtains." Finally managing to haul Damon off the fabric, Ezra shoved him into the bathroom. "Stay here." Damon pouted, his bat face scrunching into something almost adorable. "But the night calls to me." "The only thing calling to you is animal control if the neighbors see you." Ezra shut the door, leaning on it with a sigh. From inside, Damon whined. "This is not my glorious form. This is a cursed mockery." Ezra rubbed his temples. Finally some honesty. There was a long pause, then a pitiful squeak. "Ezra, don't look at me like this. I'm hideous." Ezra blinked, caught off guard by the tremor in Damon's voice. He opened the door a crack. Inside, Damon sat on the tiled floor, oversized bat ears drooping, claws fiddling with his cloak. He looked ridiculous. He also looked small. Ezra sighed, crouching down. "Hideous?" "Yeah. But also kind of cute." He hesitated. Damon's ears shot up. "Cute. I am the terror of." He tripped over his wing and face-planted into the laundry basket. Ezra burst out laughing, doubling over. Damon sat up with socks stuck to his fur, glaring. "Stop laughing. Respect me." "Can't. Not when you look like a goth guinea pig." Ezra wheezed. Hours later, Damon finally shimmered and snapped back into his human form, albeit upside down, hanging from the shower rod like he'd forgotten gravity. Ezra opened the door to find him swaying gently. "Don't even ask," Damon muttered. Ezra smirked. "So, majestic bat form, huh?" Damon groaned, covering his face. "You saw nothing." "Oh, I saw everything. And I'm never letting you live it down." Ezra crossed his arms. Damon peeked between his fingers, cheeks faintly pink. "But you didn't run. You stayed." Ezra blinked, then softened. "Yeah. Someone has to keep you from getting eaten by the curtains." For a beat, neither of them said anything. Damon's smirk returned, smaller this time, almost shy. Then, "Thank you, my knight." Ezra rolled his eyes, though his lips tugged upward. "You're impossible." "Gloriously so," Damon replied. And somehow, despite the chaos, Ezra couldn't quite disagree. Chapter 9: The Great Thunderstorm. The first rumble rolled across the city like an angry dragon. Ezra looked up from his book. Outside, the sky was bruising to a deep purple, lightning already spiderwebbing in the distance. Rain, finally, he muttered. From the hallway came a dramatic voice. Behold, mortal! Ezra pinched the bridge of his nose. Oh no! Damon burst into the living room, cloak flapping as though he'd rehearsed the entrance. His eyes glinted with excitement. Do you feel it? The storm. The heavens tremble at my command. He threw both arms wide, as though conducting an invisible orchestra. Ezra didn't even glance up from his book. Pretty sure it's just a cold front. Lies. Watch closely. Damon pointed a finger at the window. As if on cue, lightning split the sky. A thunderclap followed, rattling the window panes. Damon whipped his head toward Ezra, grinning smugly. You see? I called it. Ezra turned a page. Wow. You should apply for a job as a weather app. Damon ignored the sarcasm and strutted around the living room, narrating. The night bends to my will. The storm is but a reflection of my wrath. The next thunderclap was louder. So loud that Damon shrieked, leapt a foot in the air, and dove headfirst behind the couch. Ezra finally looked up. Are you serious? From behind the couch came a trembling voice. That was a test. The sky sought to challenge me. Okay. Ezra stood and walked over, peering down. Damon's cloak was sticking out from the cushions, his hands clamped over his ears. His eyes were wide, glistening almost childishly. Don't just stand there. Damon yelped as another boom shook the walls. He scrambled forward, clutching Ezra's arm with surprising strength. Protect me. Ezra blinked at the very real fear in Damon's face. You're telling me you're a centuries-old vampire, but you're scared of thunder? It's unnatural. A sky should not roar. Only beasts roar. And I do not trust what I cannot bite. Damon hissed. Ezra tried very hard not to laugh. You can't bite thunder, Damon. Then it is the ultimate foe. Damon moaned, curling into himself as the storm cracked again. Without warning, he bolted toward Ezra's bedroom. Hey, where are you? By the time Ezra followed, he found Damon already burrowed under his blanket, only his messy black hair sticking out. Ezra crossed his arms. That's my bed. A muffled voice. Your master has returned the favor of your hospitality by blessing your bed with his presence. Ezra stared. You're a coward. If you abandon me now, I shall perish of fright, and my blood will haunt you forever. Ezra groaned. You are so dramatic. Another crack of thunder split the air. Damon yelped and latched onto Ezra's wrist, dragging him half onto the bed. Do not leave me. Ezra stumbled, landing awkwardly beside him. Damon! Silence. The beast prowls outside. Damon pulled the blanket over both of them, his cold hands clutching Ezra's shirt as if anchoring himself. For a moment, Ezra considered shoving him off. He hated sharing space. He hated Damon's theatrics. He hated. Another thunderclap rolled through, and Damon flinched violently, pressing his face into Ezra's shoulder. Ezra froze. His heart gave a traitorous lurch. You're really that scared, huh? He muttered quietly. Damon didn't answer, just made a small, undignified whimper that no terror of the night should ever make. Ezra sighed. Very slowly, he shifted an arm around Damon's back, steadying him. You're pathetic, he said softly. Damon peeked up at him, pouty and pale. And yet you hold me. Ezra rolled his eyes. Only so you don't squeeze the life out of me every time the sky rumbles. But when Damon rested his head against him again, Ezra didn't push him away. Instead, he let his fingers absently brush through Damon's hair, surprisingly soft despite the vampire's usual chaotic grooming. The storm raged on. Lightning, thunder, rain pounding the windows. And through it, Damon clung to Ezra like a frightened cat, cloak and bravado forgotten. Ezra thought he'd hate it. Instead, he found himself strangely calm, warmer even. When the thunder softened to a distant grumble, Damon finally relaxed, eyes half-lidded. You make a fine shield, he murmured drowsily. Ezra snorted. You're impossible. Chapter 10, Family Visit. Ezra had just poured himself a cup of coffee when his phone buzzed. Mom, we're 10 minutes away. Can't wait to see you. He choked on his drink. 10 minutes. From the living room came Damon's voice, echoing with villainous grandeur. Ah, the morning silence. Perfect for plotting the downfall of. Ezra burst in, panicked. Stop. Emergency. Damon perked up. An invasion? Do we battle? His eyes glinted. Yes, kind of. My family is coming. The vampire's dramatic expression faltered. Your bloodline approaches? My mom, my aunt, and 3 cousins, they're going to expect normalcy. Do you understand that word? Normal. Human. Regular. Damon puffed out his chest. Fear not, mortal. I can blend in seamlessly. Ezra narrowed his eyes. Really? You think you can act normal? Damon threw back his head, grinning. Indeed, I am a master of disguise. He reached into his cloak and produced a pair of plastic novelty glasses with a fake mustache attached. Ezra groaned. That's not, forget it. Just, don't call me your servant. Don't talk about blood. And for the love of sanity, don't hiss at anyone. Damon saluted. As you command, my roommate. 10 minutes later, the apartment was full of voices. Ezra, you've lost weight, his mother exclaimed, hugging him so tightly he couldn't breathe. His aunt was already peering around the living room. So this is the place, Cozy, but small. And where's this roommate you keep mentioning? Ezra opened his mouth, only for Damon to swoop in like a stage actor. Greetings, mortals. I am Damon, terror of. Ezra elbowed him sharply in the ribs. The neighborhood, Damon finished weakly, plastering on what he clearly thought was a charming smile. His youngest cousin, a wide-eyed kid, gasped. Whoa, are you a magician? Damon's face lit up. Why yes, small human. You could say I dabble in the dark. Ezra stomped on his foot. Dark? Arts of accounting, spreadsheets. The spookiest of them all. Damon coughed. The family chuckled politely. Ezra's relief lasted about 30 seconds. Because 5 minutes later, Damon slipped up. Ezra, fetch me water, Damon said grandly. Ezra froze. His aunt raised a brow. Fetch you? I mean, my mortal roommate enjoys serving water. As a hobby. Damon stammered. Ezra wanted the earth to swallow him. The disaster only grew. Damon stared suspiciously at the garlic bread Mom had brought, a cursed loaf. Sniffed the air whenever someone mentioned religion, and at one point muttered about the sunlight curse when Auntie opened the curtains. But the real trouble came when Cousin Rachel, sharp-tongued and nosy as ever, smirked across the table. So, Ezra, when are you finally going to get your life together? You're almost 30, still single, still in a cramped apartment. Don't you ever think about the future? Ezra stiffened. He hated these questions. His mom gave him a gentle look, but Rachel wasn't finished. Maybe if you weren't always so grumpy, you'd have someone by now, she added. Ezra opened his mouth, words caught in his throat. But before he could speak, Damon slammed his hands down on the table. Silence, insolent one. The whole room jumped. Damon stood, eyes blazing. How dare you belittle Ezra? Do you not see the greatness before you? He provides shelter, wisdom, and coffee of unmatched quality. He is more noble than 1,000 fools who chase empty futures. Ezra gawked at him. His family stared in stunned silence. Rachel blinked, scoffing. He's noble? He's a guy with an underpaying job and a grumpy face. Damon leaned forward, cape, yes, he was wearing the cloak, billowing. To insult him is to insult me. And trust me, you do not wish to incur the wrath of... He caught Ezra's glare. His loyal friend and roommate, Damon. Silence stretched. Then Ezra's mom burst out laughing. Oh my goodness, you two are quite the pair. Rachel rolled her eyes, muttering something under her breath. But she didn't push further. Ezra's chest felt oddly warm. Damon was ridiculous, embarrassing, and nearly impossible to manage. But for the first time, someone had stood up for him in front of Rachel. After the family finally left, Ezra collapsed onto the couch, groaning. That was a nightmare. Damon flopped beside him, looking smug. A glorious battle, and we survived. You're welcome. You almost exposed yourself 15 times. But I defended your honor. Admit it. You liked it. Damon nudged him with a grin. Ezra gave him a long look. Maybe. Just a little. Damon's eyes softened for a rare moment. Then it was worth it. The quiet stretched between them. Not awkward this time, but oddly comforting. Ezra sighed, leaning back. Next time my family visits, you're banned from talking. Damon chuckled. Impossible. The world needs to hear my voice. Ezra shook his head, hiding the faintest smile. Chapter 11: The Rival Vampire. The night was peaceful, until Damon burst into Ezra's room, cape swirling, eyes blazing. Ezra, there is a disturbance in the air. A sinister presence lurks. Ezra didn't even look up from his laptop. What is it this time? A moth in the bathroom? Another spider? Damon pointed toward the window with trembling fingers. Worse. Much worse. He is here. Before Ezra could ask who, the window creaked open, and in stepped a tall, polished man in a perfectly tailored suit. His hair shone like obsidian, his movements fluid as silk. He didn't stumble, didn't trip, didn't faint. He radiated everything Damon didn't. Well, the stranger purred, voice smooth as honey. If it isn't Damon, what do they call you now? Terror of the night. More like embarrassment of the night. Ezra blinked. Who the hell are you? The man bowed with aristocratic grace. Victor, vampire of renown, master of shadows, seducer of mortals. Perhaps you've heard of me? Not once, Ezra said. Damon bristled. Victor, you pompous bat. What are you doing here? Victor circled the apartment, examining the decor with faint disdain. I heard rumors that Damon, the once proud bloodsucker, now lives with a human. A human, reduced to eating, what was it? Ah yes, chalky little blood pills. Ezra's brows shot up. Wait, everyone knows about the pills? Damon hissed, flustered. They are medicinal tablets of crimson essence, not candy. Victor chuckled. You always were pathetic. Remember when you tried to summon a storm, but only managed to get yourself wet? Ezra choked on his coffee. Wait. You what? Damon's face went beet red. It was a small miscalculation. Victor leaned against the doorframe, smirking. Honestly, Damon, it's embarrassing. A vampire afraid of thunder, of spiders, of garlic bread. No wonder you hide behind this human. Do you make him tuck you in at night too? The words cut sharper than fangs. Damon opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His usual dramatic bluster faltered, and for the first time Ezra saw something rare in his eyes. Shame. Ezra slammed his laptop shut. Okay, that's enough. Victor arched a brow. Oh? The human has a tongue. You think you're hot stuff, waltzing in here with your shiny shoes and your hair gel, but Damon's 10 times braver than you. Victor actually laughed. Braver? The man squealed at a caterpillar. Ezra shot up, standing nose to chest with Victor, who towered over him. Yeah? And he still sleeps in a creaky coffin every night, even though it gives him back pain. He tries to cook dark feasts for me even when he sets the stove on fire. He faints at blood but still calls himself terrifying. You know what that is? It's not pathetic. It's stubborn. It's commitment. He keeps trying, even when he's bad at it. Damon's mouth fell open. His cape fluttered as though it too were stunned. Ezra jabbed a finger at Victor. So if you came here to humiliate him, you can get the hell out. He might not be perfect, but he's my... Ezra froze, throat tight, words sticking. My roommate, and I won't let you insult him. Silence. Victor blinked, then smirked faintly. Interesting. Very interesting. You defend him as though he were more than that. Perhaps you're not as alone as I thought. With a swish of his coat, Victor vaulted back out the window, vanishing into the night. Ezra exhaled, shoulders slumping. God, what a pretentious prick. Damon just stared. What? Ezra muttered. You defended me. Damon's voice was quiet, almost disbelieving. Ezra rubbed the back of his neck. Well, yeah, he was being an ass. No one has ever defended me before, Damon whispered. He looked oddly small, clutching his cape like a shield. Then, suddenly he beamed, eyes sparkling, cheeks faintly flushed. Ezra, my noble knight, you have proven your loyalty beyond question. From this day forth, you are no mere roommate. You are my sworn protector. Ezra groaned. Don't start. But Damon was already kneeling in the middle of the living room, cape pooled around him, gazing up with unshakable adoration. You are worthy of songs, of ballads, of eternal. Ezra shoved a pillow in his face. Shut up before I regret this. Damon muffled into the cushion. You care about me? Ezra's chest felt strangely warm, though he tried to ignore it. Yeah. Don't make it weird. But Damon only smiled behind the pillow, eyes shining. For the first time, he didn't feel like a failure at all. Chapter 12 Movie Night Confessions. It began with an argument. You must broaden your mortal horizons, Damon declared, arms crossed, cape swishing even though they were standing in the living room. Ezra rolled his eyes. It's literally just a movie, Damon. Sit down before you poke your own eye out with that cape. A movie that dares to portray my people in the most slanderous ways imaginable. Damon jabbed a finger at the DVD case Ezra was holding. This so-called cinematic masterpiece dares to depict vampires sparkling in the sunlight like disco balls. Do you realize how offensive that is? We smolder, Ezra. We brood. We do not glitter. Ezra grinned, shoving the disc into the player. Exactly why I'm making you watch it. You need a dose of reality. Damon gasped, clutching his chest like Ezra had stabbed him with garlic bread. Reality? You mean propaganda. Just sit down. Ezra shoved him onto the couch. Damon perched on the edge like it was a throne of judgment, cape draped around him in ominous folds. The opening credits rolled. Within minutes, Damon was heckling at full volume. Look at his posture. No vampire bends like that unless he's picking up his dry cleaning. Oh, for the love of shadows. Why is that vampire brooding in a tree? That's bird behavior, not dignified nocturnal stalking. Ezra was already doubled over with laughter, wheezing. Bird behavior. Damon. Stop. My stomach hurts. I will not stop. Damon roared, pointing at the screen. This is character assassination. When the lead vampire sparkled in the sunlight, Damon actually screamed, covering his eyes with his cape. Blasphemy. Lies. Slender slanders. If I stepped into sunlight, I would not sparkle. I would combust. Horribly. Do you see me sparkling, Ezra? Ezra was howling, clutching the couch cushions. No, you'd sparkle. Just a little. Maybe like cheap glitter glue. Damon whirled on him, fangs bared in outrage. I am not craft supplies. That only made Ezra laugh harder. He laughed until his cheeks ached, until he was wiping tears from his eyes. Damon tried to keep his offended scowl, but the corners of his lips twitched. When the credits finally rolled, Ezra collapsed against the couch, breathless. Best movie night ever. Damon sniffed. Worst travesty in the history of visual storytelling. Ezra nudged him with his shoulder. You're just mad because he had better hair than you. Damon sputtered. Better? He touched his own carefully styled locks, horrified. No one's hair is more fearsome than mine. Ezra burst out laughing again, his voice echoing warm and unrestrained through the apartment. Damon froze, staring. His chest gave a strange, unfamiliar flutter. Ezra noticed. What? Do I have popcorn on my face? Damon hesitated, fiddling with the edge of his cape. His usual dramatic tone faltered, softer now, vulnerable. No. I like your laugh. Ezra blinked. What? I said, I like your laugh. It is unrefined, chaotic, loud. He paused, eyes darting away, then admitted in a rush. But it makes the room feel less empty. For once, Ezra didn't tease. He just stared, the laughter fading into something gentler. Damon looked utterly out of his element. Cheeks faintly pink, fangs barely peeking as though even they were shy. Ezra smirked, trying to lighten the air before it got too heavy. So, basically, my laugh makes good vampire proofing. Keeps away the existential gloom. Damon groaned, covering his face with his cape. Why do I even attempt sincerity with you? But Ezra only chuckled softly, nudging him again. Because you know I'll get it. And thanks. I needed that. They sat there in silence, the credits long over, the hum of the television filling the room. Damon slowly lowered his cape, sneaking a sideways glance at Ezra. Ezra pretended not to notice, but his lips quirked into a small smile. For once, Damon didn't feel ridiculous for being himself. And for once, Ezra realized he didn't mind Damon's company. In fact, he liked it, more than he was ready to admit. Chapter 13, Rescue and Revelation. It started with a flyer. Ezra found it pinned to the corkboard outside their apartment building. Neighborhood Safety Patrol. Beware of strange, cloaked man roaming at night. Ezra groaned. Oh no! Damon, peering over his shoulder, puffed up like a smug rooster. Behold! My terrifying presence has at last been acknowledged. Ezra jabbed the paper with his finger. This doesn't mean they respect you. It means they think you're a creeper in a cape. Which, to be fair, you are. But Damon only tossed his cloak. Fear is the first step to worship, Ezra muttered. Or the first step to police reports. That night, Ezra's worst fears came true. He'd gone to pick up takeout, leaving Damon alone for exactly 23 minutes. When he returned, he found chaos in the alley behind their building. Two men in leather jackets and crosses were cornering Damon, who stood frozen, clutching his cloak like a shield. Step away, creature. One hunter barked, brandishing a wooden stake. I am not a creature. I am, Damon slightly dangerous. Damon protested, voice trembling. The other hunter sneered. Save your lies, bloodsucker. We've been tracking your kind for years. Ezra's stomach dropped. This wasn't cosplay. These guys were serious. Hey, back off, Ezra shouted, striding forward before he could think. The hunters whirled. One raised his stake threateningly. You should leave, kid. This thing isn't your problem. Ezra planted himself between them and Damon. Yeah, he is. He's my problem. Damon's eyes widened. Ezra, the taller hunter sneered. You don't know what you're protecting. He'll drain you dry the first chance he gets. Ezra barked a laugh. Drain me? He faints at the sight of blood. He needs a juice box after paper cuts. Trust me. This guy couldn't hurt a mosquito. Damon squawked indignantly. That mosquito was very aggressive. Not helping, Ezra muttered. The hunters didn't budge. One lunged forward, stake raised. Ezra reacted before Damon did. He grabbed a trash can lid from the alley and slammed it against the hunter's wrist. The stake clattered to the ground. The second hunter swung at him, but Ezra ducked, adrenaline roaring in his ears. Run, he barked at Damon. But Damon didn't move. He stood frozen, eyes wide, watching Ezra fight like a cornered wolf. Ezra, go! Instead of fleeing, Damon stumbled forward, flapping his cloak like a deranged bat. Fear me, hunters of fools. His voice cracked halfway, but somehow his sheer absurdity bought Ezra a second to grab the fallen stake and snap it in half. Finally, perhaps realizing their creature wasn't exactly a threat and his roommate was feral, the hunters retreated with curses. This isn't over, one growled. Keep your pet vampire on a leash. Ezra stood panting, sweat dripping down his temples, until the alley was quiet again. Only then did Damon move. He grabbed Ezra's sleeve, tugging gently. You fought for me. Ezra turned on him, voice sharp. Of course I did. What the hell were you thinking? Strutting around in your cloak like you're begging for trouble. Do you have any idea? I could have lost you. The last words slipped out before he could stop them. His throat closed. Damon's lips parted. His usual dramatic retorts died on his tongue. Instead, he whispered, You mean that? Ezra ran a hand through his hair, avoiding his gaze. Yeah, I mean it. You drive me insane, Damon. You burn toast, you terrify children, You shriek at spiders, but the idea of you being heard out here, I couldn't stand it. His voice cracked, raw. For once, Damon didn't laugh, didn't make a theatrical pose. He stepped closer, cloak brushing against Ezra's arm. His voice was soft, trembling. Ezra, I think I've been afraid of saying it out loud, but I love you. He swallowed hard. Ezra's head snapped up. Damon's cheeks were flushed, but his eyes shone with sincerity. You're the only mortal who's ever seen me at my weakest. And instead of laughing, you fight for me. You protect me. You make me feel like I'm not a failure. You make me feel worthy. Ezra's chest tightened painfully. He reached out, hesitated, then cupped Damon's face with a rough hand. Damon leaned into it instantly, like he'd been waiting forever. You're still an idiot, Ezra said. Damon laughed. You're idiot. Ezra let out a shaky breath. Yeah. And then, finally, he kissed him. It wasn't dramatic, not like Damon's fantasies of gothic castles and thunderstorms. It was messy, desperate. Ezra's hand in Damon's hair, Damon's cloak tangling around them both. Damon made a tiny, startled sound, then melted against him, clutching his shirt like he never wanted to let go. When they broke apart, Damon was grinning, breathless. I knew you couldn't resist my dark charms. Ezra rolled his eyes, but pulled him back in for another kiss anyway. Because for all the chaos, all the ridiculousness, Damon was his, and Ezra wasn't letting go. Chapter 14, Fangs. Forever. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet if Damon were being honest. He perched on the arm of the sofa, a bag of ice pressed to his bruised cheek. Ezra, across from him, leaned in the kitchen doorway with his arms crossed, glaring like a disappointed parent whose kid had just set fire to the microwave. Again. You could have gotten yourself killed, Ezra muttered, breaking the silence. I nearly got myself killed. There's a difference. Besides, what a poetic way to go. Struck down by vampire hunters, fighting for my honor. Damon corrected, wincing as he adjusted the ice pack. You tripped over a trash can lid. Damon scowled. It was a tactical maneuver. Ezra pinched the bridge of his nose. You're impossible. And yet you love me? Damon shot back automatically, then froze. His eyes widened. He'd said it out loud. Not in a flirty, half-teasing way. Not in a mock-the-mortal way. Just plain. Bare. True. Ezra's chest tightened. Damon looked like he wanted to dive headfirst into the couch cushions and never come out. What I meant was, Damon stammered, waving his hands frantically. What I intended to say was something far more profound. A vow of eternal devotion. A speech that would echo through the ages. Damon. The name was soft, but it cut through his spiraling. Damon swallowed, meeting Ezra's eyes. Ezra crossed the room slowly, his boots thudding against the worn carpet. Damon's mouth opened. Another dramatic declaration ready to fall out. But Ezra stopped it the simplest way possible. He kissed him. Damon made a startled squeak, like a mouse trapped in a cathedral. Then his arms shot up around Ezra's neck, clinging desperately, like he thought Ezra might vanish if he didn't hold tight enough. The ice pack slipped from his hand and landed on the floor with a dull thump. Forgotten. Ezra pulled back just enough to murmur, You talk too much. Damon's wide eyes softened. He let out a shaky laugh. And you kiss too well. Unfair advantage, mortal. Ezra smirked. Guess I finally shut you up. Damon pouted, but it melted into a grin as Ezra tugged him into another hug. For once, Damon didn't try to posture or pose. He simply leaned into Ezra's chest, burying his face in the fabric of his shirt. The steady heartbeat beneath his ear made something in him unclench. A centuries-old knot of loneliness he hadn't realized he was still carrying. You're warm, Damon mumbled. You're clingy. You don't mind. Ezra didn't argue. His arms tightened around Damon instead. For a while, they stayed like that, breathing together, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and Damon's occasional sniffle. Then Damon ruined it. So, are we, bonded forever now? Blood oath? Eternal matrimony? Should I draft a gothic contract in red ink? Ezra laughed so suddenly he nearly choked. Damon tilted his head back, indignant. I'm being serious. You're never serious. But yeah, we're something. Family, partners, idiots, all of the above. Ezra flicked his forehead lightly. Damon's chest swelled. Partners, he echoed, like it was the most sacred word in the world. Then, with a sly grin, does this mean I can finally put my toothbrush next to yours? Ezra groaned. Of all the things you could be excited about. But he was smiling and Damon saw it. Damon grinned back, fangs flashing. Face it, Ezra. You're stuck with me. Fangs, forever. Ezra shook his head, tugging Damon closer again. Yeah, forever. They collapsed back onto the couch, a tangle of limbs and laughter, Damon's cloak half draped over them like a ridiculous blanket. Ezra couldn't remember the last time he felt this light, this stupid, this alive. And Damon, terrified of spiders, fainting at paper cuts, setting off grocery store alarms, felt, for the first time in centuries, truly seen. Not as the terror of the night, not as a failure, but as Damon, Ezra's Damon. And that was scarier and better than the dark could ever be.